Hey guys, welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show Week 1 Playoff Edition. It's hard to believe we've already made it this far in the season. My first season covering all of our football teams in Shelby County, and it's just gone by in the blink of an eye. But an exciting football season. I couldn't have asked to be a part of anything better, to be honest with you. Now we've got the first week of the playoffs kicking off this Friday night. We're going to look ahead to all 5 of our playoff teams that are taking part in games this upcoming Thursday and Friday night. Some games will be on Thursday. We haven't made the official announcement on all of those yet, but we know Briarwood will be on Thursday night. So we'll touch on all of our 5 playoff matchups this Friday night within the county. We'll also look back at the final week of the regular season. And though some teams' seasons did come to an end, there are a lot of great storylines for those teams, and we'll talk about all of those as well. We'll do that right before we touch on our SCR Stars of the week at the very end of the show. So we'll look back at all of the teams that season ended this past Friday night right before that segment. So be on the lookout for that at the end. We'll also touch on all 5 of our county matchups like we do every week when we go down classification by classification, and we'll break down all of those matchups as teams try to move on from round 1 of the playoffs to round 2, and I expect several of them to actually do that. There may only be 1 or 2 teams that lose this week. So we'll go ahead and start with that, and we'll start in 7A. So as seems to have been the case all season, we're going to start with the Thompson Warriors in the 7A classification, and for good reason. Coming off their first undefeated regular season since their 1982 state championship season, after taking down Hillcrest Tuscaloosa last Thursday night. They win that one 33-27, and while they're able to pick up a win, they're coming off of that Hoover game, which was just one of the best high school football games I've ever seen, one of the best football games in general that I've ever seen, and you could kind of expect a little bit of a letdown going into taking on the Hillcrest Tuscaloosa team that is a very strong 6A football team and won 7 games in a row going into that matchup with Thompson. And Thompson jumps up. They jump up 33-13 and look like they're going to run away there in the fourth quarter. And Freeman, I'm sure, was thinking about pulling his starters at that point to get them some rest ahead of the playoffs. But then Hillcrest goes down, scores, recovers an onside kick. They come back, make that a tight ball game. Had the ball with about a minute left, down 33-27, but couldn't do anything as Jalen Bustamante was able to pick up an interception to seal that win for Thompson. Freeman was not happy after the game. That was pretty evident. And that was probably a blessing in disguise for this Thompson football team, however, as they go into the first round of the playoffs. You either want something like that tests your team, or a loss even, to kind of bring them back down to the level that they're at as they try to go on and win a 2017 state championship in the Class 7A in the state, which is going to be a difficult task, but it starts this Friday night. They're taking on a Huntsville team that they honestly should be able to handle. It's a very average Huntsville team that is 6-4 on the season right now, averaging just 24.3 points per game, but the key is they're giving up 22.6. That's Thompson's exploited defenses like that all season long. They're going to be able to exploit this one as well, and I think this last week where they struggled on that Thursday night, coming off that win over Hoover, it kind of you could expect a little bit of a hangover. That's what they got. I think now they're going to be refocused again, revamped to make that playoff run. When you've got a team scoring 41.5 points per game and giving up just 18.1, and a lot of those games have been playing just 3 quarters, sometimes even 1 quarter or half, just 1 half. So this is a very solid Thompson football team. We've all seen it at this point, whether it be in that Hoover game that was televised and talked about all over the state, or throughout the season. But their closest game, a 21-20 win over Hateville to open the season, and they've dominated since then. And Hateville went on to win the region championship in Georgia over there for their classification, a favorite to win the state championship in their classification as well. So very good Thompson football team. I think they get it done in the first round against Huntsville. They'll either be taking on Bob Jones or Mountain Brook in the second round should they advance. But where it gets key is in the semifinals. That's where they would either face Hoover again or Hewitt-Trussville. But for now, focus 1 week at a time. I think Thompson's the better team in this matchup and will go on to beat Huntsville to advance to round 2 of the playoffs. So our second of the 7A playoff teams is going to be the Spain Park Jaguars, and they narrowly hung on to that spot. Had Oak Mountain been able to beat Mountain Brook in a very questionable game where Oak Mountain really had a chance to beat Mountain Brook, and then they went on to beat Spain Park. Had Oak Mountain pulled off that game over Mountain Brook, they would be in the playoffs instead of Spain Park. Instead, Oak Mountain loses to Mountain Brook 31-28. And then Spain Park loses that next week 29-23 to Oak Mountain. So Spain Park, the one that ends up getting that fourth spot, the one that was a battle for between Vestavia, Oak Mountain, Spain Park in that 7A Region 3 classification. And Spain Park was lucky to get to this point because of their struggles as of late. They had lost or only won 2 games in their last 6, and those 2 wins came over Tuscaloosa County and Huffman, and by 9 points or less. Those are the 2 worst teams in that region. So Spain Park was really reeling. They go into a matchup with Minor this last Thursday night, and they get a huge confidence boost when they pick up a 49-14 win over Minor. And albeit Minor a 4-6 6A team, it was a huge confidence boost for that offense that had been struggling recently, and the defense that's been struggling really since week 3 of the season. So it started with Braxton Barker, a huge game there. I believe 15 of 18, 294 yards and 5 touchdowns, and really didn't play most of the fourth quarter either. So that's what you need from your quarterback as you head into a matchup with Hewitt-Trussville in the first round of the playoffs. Hewitt-Trussville, the number 3 team in the 7A classification, and really might be the favorite for the state championship. It seems like when you get out of the South, where you've got Central Phoenix City and McGill-Tulane, you go up north and you've got those 3 teams of Hoover, Thompson, and Hewitt-Trussville right there that seem to be the favorites. And it's a tough matchup for Spain Park in that first round. The Huskies are scoring close to 50 points per game at 48 right now, and the Spain Park defense still giving up 20-plus points per game. That's going to be the struggle spot. It's going to rely heavily, if they want to pick up a win, on Braxton Barker at the quarterback position. They used the running backs early in that win over Minor, but really let them rest a lot of the rest of the game, especially Diari Johnson. So it's going to rely a lot on Braxton Barker's shoulder, being able to come out and put up some offensive numbers like this. He's been waiting his whole life for this, I'm sure, with a dad like he has in Jay Barker, who's been in these situations. He's prepped for this situation. I think he's going to come out, have a big game. This is going to be closer than a lot of people think. I think that Hewitt-Trussville will be able to pull it out in the end just simply because of the talent all over the field. But don't be surprised if Spain Park pulls off the upset in round 1. And I key that back to last week's victory over Minor, where they gained that confidence that they needed. Even though Minor, not as great of a team as Hewitt-Trussville, not even close, it's all about confidence when you get to the postseason. Healthiness and confidence is what you need. Spain Park seems to have that coming off last week's win. They're going to keep this one close and would not be surprised if they're able to pull off the upset. Pelham is that one team that, being the 4 seed in their region, they get a very difficult, unfortunate draw in the first round of the playoffs. That's going to be with 6A number 4 Spanish Fort, and the Toros have been tearing things up lately. They've, since their opening loss to 7A number 4 McGill-Tulane, who's one of the state championship favorites in the 7A classification, Spanish Fort has gone on to reel off 9 victories in a row. They're coming into this game on fire right now, and Pelham's going to have a tough time keeping up simply because of their defense. Their offense is loaded with talent right now, and a lot of that talent's going to be back next year as well. But their defense is what's been struggling, especially since those first few games of the season. But this could have been a much different season for Pelham as well. 2 of those first 3 games, they lose by 7 points in the final couple minutes. They could have had a much better region record, which would have prevented this first-round matchup. That being said, offense scoring 32 points per game, loaded with talent, like I just said. The defense actually, though, giving up 2.8 more points per game than the offense, 34.8 points per game defensively. You're going up against a Spanish Fort team that's scoring 40.3. They're going to score a lot of points. And the confidence for Pelham to be thinking about that is coming off of the win they just had over John Carroll. They put up 64 and a 64-46 win over the Cavaliers last Friday night. But John Carroll, not a very good football team this year. Pelham really should have won that big and kept John Carroll under 20 points. But the defense has just been struggling a little bit too much lately. I do think this is one of those games where they could keep it close for a while because of that offensive talent that they have on several. They can spread it all over the field with Brandon Sledge, Edward Gibson, quarterback, and Matthew Rye that's dual threat. They have all kind of weapons on that offensive side of the ball. They're going to keep up with Spanish Fort for a little while, but Spanish Fort just going to put up way too many points against that Pelham defense. That being said, this Pelham team, we thought they were a year away from even making the playoffs. So what Coach Tom Causey did with this group of a lot of juniors, it was very impressive, and they could pull off the upset. I'm not saying their season is over. I'm just saying that next year, be on the lookout for this Pelham team. They're going to be scary in that 6A region or Region 3 division. So strong season for Pelham this year. They get another chance this Friday night to scare some people and be the talk of the town if they can pull off an upset against the 6A number 4 team. But no matter what happens in that game, moving forward, if they do advance in the playoffs or next year in 2018, this is a scary Pelham Panthers football team that seems to be on the rise and coming back. A lot of young talent besides those juniors as well. A lot of sophomore, a lot of freshmen. They're building up a strong program right now, and I expect them to be back next year contending for not only the region championship with difficult teams, I might add, but they could contend for a state title as well in the coming year. So Pelham on the rise right now. That's a credit to head coach Tom Causey and this young group of players that's really playing hard. But 6A number 4, Spanish Fort this Friday night, going to be a difficult matchup. I do expect Pelham to keep it close for a while and play a tough game against the Toros. Now is the time for the Briarwood Lions. We've been talking all year since the preseason that this is a team that can contend, my favorite to contend for the 5A state championship. They've been number 1 in the 5A standing since, I believe, week 2 or 3 of the season, have not relinquished that spot. They are playing the best football next to Thompson. Those two are hand in hand and playing the best football in the county, but they're definitely playing the best football in the 5A classification. This is where it starts their run at a state championship, something that they had on their minds coming into the season after last year's heartbreaking semifinal loss. They want this more than anybody probably in the state in any classification, and it all starts this Friday night. They'll be taking on Crossville in the first round of the playoffs at Lions Pride Stadium. And looking back at last week, Briarwood had another momentous win over 4A powerhouse Madison Academy, a team that had won 7 in a row coming into that game, and Briarwood shut them down. They pick up a huge win in that game, 27-3, only give up 3 points. It's a game last year, while it's a 4A team in Madison Academy, it's a game that Briarwood only won 21-17 last season. So a big win there and a huge statement by the defense and the offense in that game to kind of grit the offense really gritty in that one and pulling off the win. But the defense, I mean, you can't say much more about the way they have performed this year. Now they'll be taking on a Crossville team that has lost 6 in a row to end the regular season. They're giving up 34 points per game, and that's huge when you look at this matchup with the Briarwood offense continuing to improve and having weapons that can be spread all over the field, and J.R. Tranrino and Luke Pruitt at the running back positions, and then Hudson Hartsfield and Carson Eddy at the wide receiver position. And then you've got a quarterback in Michael Ayers who can throw the ball wherever he needs to, or he can take off and run as well. So they've got a dynamic offense, but the key in this one, the defense, giving up 9.5 points per game throughout the regular season, a regular season in which they finished 10-0 for the first time since their 2007 team that made a run all the way to the state championship game before losing a heartbreaking game there. So this defense is stout, and that's what's going to cost Crossville, a team that's lost 6 in a row, as I just mentioned. They've scored 0-6, 14, and 14 in their last 4 games. That's not going to bode well when you're going up against a Briarwood team that's not going to let you score any points. I expect Briarwood to win this big, and I think they might even pull off a shutout in the first round of the playoffs. They're going to make a statement this Friday night that they are the team to reckon with in the 5A playoff run. And I believe they're going to win a state championship this season. They really shouldn't be challenged until they make it to the state title game. It's yet to be seen right now what they can actually do, but they have one mission coming into this season, and that's to win a state championship. It starts this Friday night when they take on Crossville there at Lions Pride Stadium. Our last playoff game of the week comes in the 5A classification as well. We'll look at that before diving in to look at all of the other teams that finished their regular season last Friday night, and it's the Calera Eagles. And your guess is as good as mine as to what's going to happen when they host Jackson this Friday night in the first round of the playoffs. This is a Calera team that has been up and down all season. One week, the offense will be good. The next week, the defense will be good. One week, they'll both be good, and one week, they'll both be bad. And it's been really difficult to kind of figure out what's happening. They were on a roll. They had won 3 in a row, 41-14, 42-16, and 63-0 going into their regular season finale against Sylacauga, and they lose that one 45-35 in a very wild game, a game where they were down by a lot. They were close at times, and Sylacauga went up and was able to hold on in that one. But Calear's offense still had 400-plus yards, I believe, or at least close to 400 yards in that game. And lost. And I think they were only within 3 or 4 yards of Sylacauga offensively. So it's been mind-boggling at times to see the potential that this Calear team has, but sometimes it just goes by the wayside. They aren't able to put it all together on the same night. They get a Jackson team in the first round that's 5-4 overall in the season. Calear is 6-4 overall in the season. That being said, this is a team where Calear should be able to put everything together as they have at times this year and advance to that second round. That second round is going to be a different story. They'll be taking on one of the better teams in the state if they do win this Friday night. But this is a team where Calear has got to be able to pull off a complete game. It's a Jackson team that's scoring just 20 points per game. And I think the Calear defense is finally going to show up again like they did during that 3-game win streak a few weeks ago. So the offense has so much talent around it. It's limiting the turnovers that's key for the offense. If they can do that, it's going to be tough for somebody to beat them, but they have turned the ball over a lot this season. I expect them to try to show some things and gain some momentum this Friday night in that first round of the playoffs. And it really relies on the defense. I think they need to show up and step up and show that they can prove that they can win the team a football game instead of just relying solely on the offense, because at times they have shown that, and then the offense goes on to have their best games of the season. So if the defense can be clicking, this is a very good football team, and it has happened at times this year. They have looked like one of the better teams in the 5A classification to me at several different times, but it's just all got to be clicking when you're trying to make a deep run into the playoffs, and I think it will when they take on Crossville on Friday night, but it's sustaining that into the next round and on if they want to make a deep run into the playoffs, which every year it seems like they have a strong regular season, finish second or first in that region, and then fall in the first or second round of the playoffs. So I expect them to use that as motivation and make a run this year, but it's going to start with their defense stepping up and this team kind of gelling and having a complete game together. They'll get that Friday night in a win over Crossville, but sustaining that's going to be the question whether they can make a run all the way to the title. Before we go ahead and talk about our SCR Stars of the Week, I want to look back at the final week of the regular season, our other teams that closed their season, their 2017 high school football seasons. And there were some good storylines this year that, weren't talked about enough or were really special, especially as it got later into the season. And we'll start in 7A with Oak Mountain. They pick up a season-ending 36-29 win over Hazel Green this past Friday night. And boy, the last 3 weeks of the season, Oak Mountain looked like one of the better teams in the county. It's unfortunate that they're going to miss out on the playoffs. As I said, that game against Mountain Brook, they trailed 21-0 at one point and come back, make that a tight ball game, tie it 21-21, and almost won the game. There's a questionable call on a fumble in the end zone. They end up losing 31-28 by 3 in that game. Then go on to blow out Spain Park 29-3, which means if they had beaten Mountain Brook, they would be in the playoffs right now. But either way, the amount of heart and fight that they showed, I know there was a lot of frustration at times, some injuries throughout this 2017 season, but to pick up almost 3 wins in a row to end the season, there was some great play from several different players, Carson Bobo and Luke Purser on the offensive side, as well as Connor Webb, and a bunch of guys defensively that really stepped up, especially after Jackson Murphy went out with his torn ACL. So a lot of these guys are going to be on the all-county team, so be on the lookout for that when we get that out and released here in the next few weeks. But strong end to the season for Oak Mountain, something they can use to build off of going into next year. One of the smallest team Coach Bell's had there at Oak Mountain in a while. So if they can grow that program, get some more guys playing next year, this really bodes well for their future, in my opinion, the way they ended this season after a tough start. They start 3-0, almost win 3 more to end the regular season, but do go 2-1 over that final 3-game stretch. Moving on to the 6A classification, Chelsea, another one of those teams like Oak Mountain, almost won 3 in a row to end the season after starting 0-7. to start the season. They end up going 2-1 over that last two games with wins over Chilton County and Helena in back-to-back weeks for a 2-game win streak. Then they lose a tough one, 29-37 to Coleman this past Friday night. But the amount of fight and grit they showed as well, kind of like Oak Mountain, the determination to get better and be the best they could be by the end of the season. From week 1 to now, this Chelsea team is a much different team, light years ahead of where they were. And it starts with freshman running back Collier Blair, who's going to be back next year, had several big games. And then you look at Kendrick Simpson as well. He went out on top with around 142 yards and 2 touchdowns this past Friday night in that loss to Coleman, a game where they were down big at one point, and then they fought back and made that an 8-point game. They were within 8 3 different times, and it's just the amount of fight they showed in that game was kind of a testament to the fight they showed the entire season. Also in 6A, the Helena Huskies, a difficult season for them this year. They dealt with a lot of injuries to quarterbacks, other players, and it was the final run for 2 top wide receivers in Justin Stuckey and Deontay Tolbert. Those 2 guys, they'll be leading the basketball team here in the next few weeks, but they fall 34-7 to Pell City to end the season. A tough 1-9 season for the Huskies, and they'll have to look to bounce back in a big way next year. We'll see how the reclassification and stuff like that affects them moving ahead into the 2018 football season. We'll move down to the 5A classification now, and a tough end to the 2017 season for the Shelby County Wildcats. They lose 28-27 by 1 point to Jemison on senior night, and we are aware that a fight did break out there at the end. We can't report on exactly what's happened and anything. I don't want to call anybody out without having the full facts, considering that I wasn't there in person and that kind of stuff. But apparently the senior festivities, the alma mater after the game, that kind of stuff was canceled because of the fight. And it's just an all-around tough way for that season to end for the Wildcats as they lose a couple of games at the end that they really should have won. But moving down to the 3A classification, the Montevallo Bulldogs, another one of those teams that really showed a lot of fight and determination, like the first 2 we talked about. They lose 28-6 to Fultondale to close out their season, but a very strong year for the Montevallo Bulldogs late when they were dealing with a lot. They had a lot of injuries, a lot of young guys in the lineup. They challenged some really good football teams and were in games in the first half and first quarter against Gordo and other teams, especially Fultondale this past Friday night, down 7-6 at the half against a team that was looking to win have their first undefeated season in 41 years. Fultondale goes on to win 28-6, but Montevallo, boy, with so much young talent playing this year, it was a rough season overall, but they got so much experience and really competed a lot of the time despite their lack of depth. They're going to be a good team, a team to look out for next year that could rebound and be one of our best rebound teams in 2018. The last of the AHSAA teams I want to talk about is going to be the Vincent Yellow Jackets. They fall 54-38 in their final game of the season. They finished 5-5, but a combined 1-19 coming into the season over the last 2 years. Very impressive to see what head coach Wiley McKellar has done there in just 2 years of coaching that football team, taking them from a winless season 2 years ago to a 1-win last year, and now to 5 wins in 2017. They had a chance. They had 2 region games where they could have clinched a playoff spot over the final 2 weeks of region play, and they lose both of those. Then they lose a tough one to Victory Christian to end the season, but the injury bug just really bit them at the wrong time. This program's headed in the right direction, and an unbelievable season for the Vincent Yellow Jackets. Had they had Chris Hardy healthy and a couple other guys on the defensive and offensive side of the ball, they would have been in the playoffs this year, which would have been an unbelievable story in its own. But the 5 wins after a 1-19 combined record over the last 2 years, impressive enough, and this program's headed in the right direction. The last thing I want to talk about, the Evangel Lightning. They pick up a 55-14 win to repeat as the ACSC state champions. And it's a game where Evangel only won by 7 points earlier in the season, had to hold on late to win that game. They win this one 55-14. Now 3 times in a row they've beaten Ezekiel in the state championship game. 8-0 all time now against Ezekiel as well. Ezekiel has never beaten them, and it starts all over the field. There's Seth Harrison with an unbelievable game receiving. Will Farrell, he had close to probably 200, 300 yards rushing, and I believe 4 touchdowns in that game. and several other guys with the Henderson brothers and Camden Smith. I mean, just an unbelievable performance by them. Very physical in that game on the defensive side of the ball to limit Ezekiel to 14, and the offense was just lights out. After falling down 6-0, they end up putting up 55 points and outscore Ezekiel 55-8 the rest of the way. So congrats to the Evangel Lightning on their 2017 ACSC State Championship and their three-peat. That's a wrap-up of what's happened in the final week of the regular season. And now we'll jump ahead, look at all of the singled-out SCR Stars of the week from those final games of the regular season. So it's the final SCR Stars of the Week segment where we're going to have every team to be able to look at and some great performances to close out the regular season. It's one of those weeks where just you can't choose one player because several different guys had standout performances. And it's been a blast doing this. I can't wait to continue it next year, continue it down the line through the playoffs as well. But glad we get to recap the final week of the regular season, talk about some of the standout performances, some of the guys on senior night, which is just so cool that they're able to go out on such a high note. But we'll start in 7A, a team that is making the two teams that are making the playoffs. We'll start with. It starts with Thompson. Talia Tungavaloa, he had 353 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. And now his completion percentage at 27 of 50, not very good. Threw 3 interceptions. It was probably his worst game of the year, but to still throw over 350 yards in that kind of situation is very impressive. And he'll be able to bounce back from that 3 interception night, the low completion percentage. They threw the ball almost every single play, so you're going to make some mistakes and throw some interceptions in that kind of situation. Moving into the playoffs, they're going to use their running backs, Shadrack Bird and Joseph Ford, a little bit more. They just didn't want to get those guys injured and put too much of a toll on them in that final week of the regular season. Also in the 7A classification, another quarterback, the Spain Park Jaguars, Braxton Barker, 15 of 18, 294 yards, 5 touchdowns. He was one of the closest ones to being the overall SCR Star of the Week for his senior night performance there for the Jags. Great way to go out on his home field. They'll be taking on Hewitt-Trussville this Friday night, where he's going to have some big numbers like that again. His favorite target, as it has been all season, Jalen McMillan, there out wide. He had 4 catches for 140 yards, an unbelievable yards per catch performance there, as he took several big ones deep in that game for the Jags. So 2 great performances there from those 2 guys. They'll need to do that again this week in a matchup with number 3 Hewitt-Trussville. Oak Mountain, one of those teams that ended the season really strong. They got some great performances from 2 seniors in Connor Webb and Carson Bobo. Carson Bobo caught a couple of passes for 91 yards, 4 catches, I should say, for 91 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. So 3 of his 4 catches went for touchdowns. Webb ended up throwing those 3 touchdowns. He had 133 yards on 9 of 17 passing. And another guy that I took notice of when Luke Purser went down with his injury, Jonathan Bennett, he's had to play a lot due to a few injuries at the running back position this year. Just a sophomore, he goes 14 times on the ground for 101 yards. So that's a bright future for that kid in the coming years there at Oak Mountain. Moving on down to the 6A classification, a couple of good performances from both Chelsea and Pelham. We'll start with Chelsea. Collier Blair, just a freshman, 149 yards on 21 carries. And the kid he's not the most intimidating looking guy. He's very short, but he is stout, kind of like Zaylon Reynolds there last year. Collier Blair is a guy that has a bright future, should use that to spring forward next year as their lead and feature back. But another guy, senior Kendrick Simpson, went out with all he had in this game. He goes for 163 yards and 2 touchdowns on 25 carries. So between those 2 guys, almost 300 yards of total, over 300 yards total rushing on the ground. So great performances from Collier Blair and Kendrick Simpson there at Chelsea. Moving on to Pelham, they had 2 great performances as well. It starts with Matthew Wright at the quarterback position. A big reason they were able to post 64 points in their win over John Carroll. He had 127 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns, and an additional 175 yards on the ground with 2 more touchdowns. So a great night for him as he goes over 300 all-purpose yards and 4 touchdowns. Very impressive. Dylan Peterson, a running back there for the Panthers, also an unbelievable game. And with all the offensive talent, he steps up when you've got guys like Nick Blackburn and Edward Gibson that can do things as well. He goes 13 times, 197 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Rye and Peterson both, kind of like Braxton Barker, were very close to being an overall star of the week. That's what made this week so difficult to be able to choose one guy when you've got several standout performances like that. But great games from Ryan Peterson there. They, like Spain Park and Braxton Barker, need that offense to keep playing well as they go into a matchup with number 4 Spanish Fort in the first round of the 6A playoffs. Moving down to the 5A classification, Briarwood and Calera, they had some strong performances as well. Despite Calera's loss, Cornelius Brown goes 22 of 30, 340 yards passing. They had a total of 453 yards of offensive yards. I know I was a little bit confused earlier in the show saying they had around 380 or so, but 453. Problem, like I said, their defense gave up 309 rushing yards, 462 total offensive yards, but Brown right now is playing lights out as a junior. That's back-to-back weeks where he's had some impressive performances. So if he's able to play like that in the first round, they're going to put up some big numbers. Over at Briarwood in the 5A classification as well, their defense, that's all that needs to be said. They're an SCR Star this week as well. Only give up 3 points to 4A powerhouse Madison Academy. They finished the regular season through 10 games, 9.5 points per game that they gave up on the defensive side of the ball. Unbelievable to have that kind of number. Best defense in the state by far. To give up less than 10 points per game through a 10-game regular season is very impressive. That should be what leads them to the 5A state championship. Also, our final AHSAA team, that's going to be the Vincent Yellow Jackets. Xavier Kelly, they go down with the loss, but Xavier Kelly, an unbelievable performance there at the wide receiver position. He had 257 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. So an unbelievable way for him to end the season. They're going to be a strong team next year with a lot of young talent coming back. So look out for the Vincent Yellow Jackets, who had a very impressive 5-5 2017 football season. The last guy, we mentioned him just a few minutes ago, Will Farrell over at Evangel, 4 touchdowns, 3 of which went for 20-plus yards as he helps lead the Evangel Lightning to the 2017 ACSC State Championship in a 55-14 win over Ezekiel. They're third in a row in that same situation, and 8-0 all-time now against Ezekiel. So congrats to Will Farrell, that entire team. A lot of standout performances there for the Evangel Lightning. What we'll do now, we'll talk a little bit real quickly. Just want to look ahead to this Friday night. I want to tell you that Pelham will be traveling to Spanish Fort, and Spain Park will be traveling to Hewitt Trussville. Those are our only 2 teams on the road. Thompson, Briarwood, and Calera all will be at home to open the playoffs. Again, reminder, a couple of these may move to Thursday. Briarwood is already on Thursday night, so be on the lookout for that if some of the other games do change as well. That being said, congrats to all of the SCR Stars this week. Unbelievable seasons from a lot of those guys. Overall, a lot of them seniors that will not be back next year. A lot of the teams not moving on to the playoffs as well, so their last chance to impress. I had my eye on you all year. I'll keep doing that next year as well. It's one of the most exciting segments. I love being able to look over these stats, kind of geek out and nerd, a little bit of a nerd when it comes to that kind of stuff. Being such a big sports guy. So congrats to all you guys on fantastic seasons if you're not continuing your year. And best of luck to all of you in the future, whether it be back next year in high school or moving on to future endeavors. But some great performances this year. But be on the lookout. We're going to continue to do this throughout the playoffs. We'll have our Facebook Live events at all the games as well. But for now, we'll have 5 games this week in the first round of the playoffs and some great coverage for you on our Twitter account at SCR Sports as well as on Facebook. So be on the lookout for all of our great coverage. Congrats to all the teams that seasons have ended, and congrats to those continuing their 2017 season into the first round of the playoffs this week.